Okay, I think we'll get started. I'm going to start off by introducing myself and letting my co-hosts introduce themselves. My name is Alexandra Meany. I go by Alex. I use she, her pronouns, and a description of what is in the camera view. I'm wearing a gray shirt. I have long brown hair. I'm a white female. Pass it to Alec.
Hi, my name is Alec Fisher. You can use they or he pronouns for me. I'm a white male with brown hair. I have a silver necklace on. My shirt says "No New Youth Jail," and there's a white wall behind me with a circular mirror.
Right. Well, thank you for all attending. This event is being recorded and will be posted at a later date for viewing and accessibility. Si quiere escuchar en español, haz clic en el globo en la parte inferior de su pantalla. The University of Washington acknowledges the Coast Salish peoples of this land, the land which touches the shared waters of all tribes and bands within the Duwamish, Puyallup, Suquamish, Tulalip, and Muckleshoot Nation. At times, boilerplate land acknowledgements can seem mostly symbolic, so we'd like to provide additional ways for the community we're speaking in to materially support or educate ourselves about the people indigenous to where we're speaking from. We have donated in this event's name to the Real Rent Duwamish, which is an opportunity for guests on Duwamish land to help support the flourishing of Duwamish culture and the vitality of the Duwamish tribe. We'll put the link in the chat for anyone who is interested in also donating. We would like to thank the Walter Chapman Center for the Humanities, the English department at the University of Washington, and the Collective for the Study of Racial Capitalism for their support of this event. Special thanks goes out to Caitlin Palo, C.R. Grimmer, and Matthew Unruh for making this event possible. We'd also like to thank all the Spanish, CART, and ASL interpreters for this event. I'm going to pass it to Alec, my co-host, to give you an overview of the project.
Hi, everyone. And just a FYI, if you are having trouble hearing any audio, just make sure to choose English or Spanish in the bottom right-hand corner. So the overview of our project, so I'm just going to say a little bit about how this project came about and then introduce the speakers. So this project came about as sort of the fusion of the concerns coming out of two different parts of Seattle's community organizing world. So outside of our roles as graduate students at the University of Washington, Alex and I are community organizers working around issues of incarceration, which is sort of ends up being a lot of what's happened in my world, and then housing, which is sort of a big area that Alex is invested in. So one thing that's been clear for a long time in both these organizing worlds is that formerly incarcerated people were being released into homelessness without any support from the institutions who were previously confining them. So at the same time, the communities of people living outside of formal settlements who are organizing for their own life chances, like at Share a Wheel, which is where Marvin works at, have long seen how police and legal systems can criminalize homelessness. So the sort of dominant narratives we receive about the problem of homelessness most often say that we should expand the prison industrial complex or policing imprisonment and psychiatric confinement institutions as a way to sort of solve homelessness. We saw an opportunity to create an advocacy tool that responds to these linked crises by creating new connections between community organizers that support unhoused and incarcerated communities. So this event is sort of a small taste of the ongoing work that the collaborators did on the advocacy tool. So there are sort of two reasons that it was important for us to think about this type of public scholarship at the University of Washington. So the first is that this work directly supports UW students, faculty, and staff. For example, when the UW hosted Tent City 3 over on College Avenue on West Campus, there were 4 UW students living there. Also, many UW students who take courses while incarcerated were being released directly into homelessness and had to stop their education after they were released. The second reason is because part of the problem is the cultural narratives that are currently being told about incarcerated people or people who are living sort of outside of formal housing. We saw an opportunity to use our cultural expertise in the English department around narrative storytelling to help change these cultural narratives, because we saw the narratives as as a major part of the problem. If you would like to sort of view the advocacy tool and some of the incredible work that the panelists have contributed so far, is in the chat right now. And the tool is ongoing and building, so it'll sort of expand over time. To sort of introduce the speakers, one of the most exciting parts about doing this project was getting to be immersed in conversation with organizers who have such a depth of experience. So Cindy Fisher is a community organizer working to transform how we provide care and support for people with psychiatric disabilities, or just neurodivergent people and people experiencing non-consensus realities. Cindy is an organizer with the Beyond Soteria project, which is seeking to undo the trauma created by forced confinement of people with disabilities and to create healing sanctuaries where people who have been harmed by psychiatric treatment can recover, heal, and dream again. And something I actually discovered this week, funny enough, is that Cindy received her master's education from the UW as well. Marvin Futrell is a staff organizer at Nicholsville, which is a democratic organization for some of Seattle's tiny home communities, and a clinical instructor at the University of Washington's School of Public Health. Marvin is working on expanding systems to address the needs of Seattle's growing number of people experiencing homelessness and supporting participatory democratic processes and organizations owned and operated by individuals experiencing homelessness. So some of our speakers are here with us asynchronously because they are currently incarcerated, but I want to introduce them here as well so they can sort of be in the space with us too. Jessica Sylvia is a UW alum, journalist, public scholar, and trans and two-spirit organizer, currently incarcerated in Monroe Correctional Center. Jessica has had her writing published in Dame magazine and Into magazine, and you can read the latest writing on her experiences as an incarcerated trans person in Truth Out magazine. And our last speaker is Delonte Howerton. Delonte is a UW alum and public scholar currently incarcerated at the Coyote Ridge Correction Center. Delonte organizes with the Asian Pacific Islander Cultural Awareness Group, Black Prisoners Caucus, and Alliances, an LGBT organizing group. If you would like to learn more about some of the ongoing work these organizers are doing, you can check out these two links into the chat, regroundinglove.com and sharewheel.org. I'm just going to turn the panel over to Cindy, then Marvin, and then I'll play two videos from our pre-recorded videos from our community organizers who are currently incarcerated. So the first, Alex, do you want to ask the first question?
Sure. I was just going to give a bit of an overview of what the structure of our panel will look like today. So for the format of our panel discussion, Alec and I will be asking 3 questions to each of the panelists, 4 panelists, 2 who are with us asynchronously. 3 questions. So we'll start with the first question. What does home mean to you? And I'll just ask the 2 synchronous panelists today to answer in the order in which you were introduced. So Cindy, would you like to talk a bit about what home means to you?
Sure, but first I would like to shout out to Delonte. I just recently watched the movie Since I've Been Down, and one of the featured men in there was the founder of one of the founders of Black Prisoner Caucus. So it's an honor to be on the panel with you, Delante, as well as everyone. And I would highly, highly, highly recommend that film documentary about Tacoma, Washington. And since I've been down, what does home mean to me? I think it's being rewritten as I move through trying to find to help my son find his way home in the community. And I also want to clarify, I'm saying my son, I gave birth to a son 44 years ago on Monday, February 28th. In the last 7 years, their pronouns have become she, her, but because there is very little communication, I don't know. I've asked if I should refer to her as my daughter, and I just get silence or other expressions that let me know this is not something that they're willing to talk to. So I'm trying to honor her. I know she, her are pronouns. I probably will slip back and say son, or I might say son, daughter. So just want to clarify that. But home is, I think, a place where one feels like they belong and they matter, and that they feel that the environment is a part of their making and that they really choose and want. So I think it starts internally and then moves out into those that surround you, and then the structures that actually create the environment that I would want to claim as my home, which actually is shifting quite quickly in my life right now. So it's still an evolving definition. Thank you.
Thank you, Cindy. Marvin.
Home. For me, my name is Marvin Futrell. I go by Marvin and Marvin. I have found the use of pronouns sometimes a very tricky point when spending enough time to connect and learn someone's name. It's the best way to address them forever. Home. As a child, I was blessed. I grew up one of 5 brothers and a sister, both sets of grandparents, one set of great-grandparents, 26 aunts and uncles, all that lived within 13 miles of my birthplace, wow, which, by the way, was my mother's birthplace, Swanee-Noah, North Carolina. In the South, in the 50s and 60s, home was the place you were safe. Home was the place that protected you from the world. Home at that time allowed me to be a child when the world was literally going crazy around me. Those protections or those benefits of having insulation that are provided by a community or family of people whose at the start of every day is your best interest is hard to replace. As I've aged and become an adult and now a person who tries to develop and build community amongst those who have little or none, I find that it is 3 basics that have always defined home. It's a place where you feel safe. It's a place that insulates you from the world. Last, it's where love is found. Hope that answered the question.
That's
Yeah,
great. Okay.
Okay, so now we're just gonna play a short clip of some of the incarcerated organizers answering the same question. So right now we're gonna hear from Jessica Sylvia. Okay, so the first question, just to repeat it back to you, is like, what does home mean to you? And when have you felt most at home?
Sure. What does home mean to me? Home means a place that's free from intrusion. Home means the right to occupy space. Home means the place where family happens in a verbal sense. Home is a place of togetherness, belonging, and support. Home is the place that must exist and be right, or nothing else can be. It's a place of refuge from which I can overcome adversity and I can rebuild. It means rest. Home is a place where I can invent and experience a personal life. And home is not a luxury. It's a place that we all deserve. That's all.
Briefly from Delante as well.
All right. My name is Delante Howerton. I use he, him pronouns. I am 20. No, I'm not 29. I'm 30. I'm an active member in the HICAG group. It's the Asian Pacific Islander Cultural Awareness Group. I do work with them, and right now there's not much going on because of COVID, but we're in the process of getting that set up here at Coyote Ridge Correction Center. And this is, a little piece of my history, I guess, would be the best explanation there.
Yeah.
How's that?
That sounds great. Okay. Awesome. I like that you said you were like, I'm 29. No, I'm 30. It's like I forgot. I always think I'm the wrong age too. Like time is nothing.
Well, I just turned 32. I'm not used to it.
Yeah, it takes a while to set in. Okay, so the second question is, what does home mean to you?
Okay, home. When I think of home, I don't think of like a you'll see in my paper, but I don't see home as like a physical place. I feel like a home is a feeling. Feeling is where I get the sense of home. Mm-hmm. My homes have never been places I've wanted to be at. Even like now, I feel like incarceration's home, but I don't want to be here either. But I have a feeling of belong. I feel like I belong here only because of the sense of community I have with my API brothers in here, and just the environment in here is just so different. It's just, I don't know. But home is definitely not a place. It's got these qualities of stability, security, safety, and just like, I don't know, that sense of belongingness that everyone craves. Like even Abraham Maslow was the one who did the little hierarchy of needs there, and all those needs need to be in a home.
Yeah, that sounds great. Okay. We can head to the sort of next question. The next question is is what barriers have you faced when creating a home? And sort of like why are those barriers sort of important for us to acknowledge and sort of work against in the present? Cindy, if you want to start, we can head to you first. Cindy, I think you're muted.
I said I would like to, if he's willing, I'd like to let Marvin go next. I want to sit with that a little bit more.
Sure. Yeah, totally. Marvin, do you have something?
I'd be happy to. as was just most aptly demonstrated, home isn't necessarily a physical place, but it is definitely a physical space.
Mm.
It can be identified. Barriers to creating home exist when false narratives are placed around those seeking it, whether it be how we view homelessness, how we view incarceration. For myself, in my experiences, I was arrested in the early 2000s. I spent 9 months in jail, just long enough for, before ever going to trial, losing a house, car, most belongings, only to then then entering into the drug diversion court, which was a newly formed program that stopped traumatizing addiction or people suffering with it, with more criminal incarceration, but given them an opportunity to actually receive help. What the court lacked was any meaningful way to establish community response. Where were people going to live? How was life going to be different other than the fact that you weren't going to jail? And I have encountered the same barriers that were learned then over the years in different efforts. A lack of understanding of what is actually needed for the human being, not the client, not the parole, the incarceration number, but what was actually needed that wasn't available to someone re-entering the society. So building community was the way to get around that. Understanding that people don't have to be alike to form community, but simply be able to express their needs and willingness to work together to achieve them become the groundwork for how folks find a safe space in which to express themselves and work for the common good, being able to join into the one voice that is powerful enough to create the changes that are needed so folks aren't continuously separated, isolated, and left to the vices of our society that aren't in their best interest. So the barriers still consist today as we deal with homelessness from my end. So many false narratives of what the causes of homelessness are. That it's a people problem, not a systemic problem, which we know it's a systemic problem. Much like incarcerating people, has systemic impacts that go highly unlooked at. And the fear that folks gathering to stay together and safe is not a good thing. It's for some reason a bad thing. So that's how those would be the barriers I've consistently worked up against when trying to establish a sense of community or home for people working with incarceration and or just simple homelessness, which we know that incarceration will guarantee. So I'll pass it back to Alex now.
All right. Okay, Marvin, thank you. Thank you. It's something Marvin said about how, populations are isolated, alienated. I think that goes even into a deeper root of what's the matter with our communities, period, is that we as a culture create community around outside things, around status, around the house, around jobs, around cars. And we allow that to infiltrate and create barriers to our humanity. And so we have communities that have lost touch with their humanity, and therefore people become disposable because they don't fit into the definitions that people define their humanity by. And that is deeply disturbing, because then you allow for laws and redlining and turning your back, so that we have more and more people that don't get to have the home, the safety, the belonging, because our culture has lost its sense of humanity. Humanity is humanity because of our connections and our caring, because we see in others ourselves, and we care about what happens to others more than we care about our property or our status. So then when you have that in place, then other barriers that are truly unnatural, we allow those other barriers. For instance, my son, I cannot get him on a lease in a house because he was targeted early on and given experimental drugs and cycled into the hospital, experienced extreme amount of trauma. And every time he came out, most times they just put him on the streets until they came up with laws that said that you have to have a place when you send someone out of the hospital. You have to have a place for them. So then that gives them a reason to keep them in the hospital for years later, because they can't find a place because they've been labeled. It's a deeply disturbing piece of who we've become. And yet I feel like because more and more people are now getting caught in that dragnet, the dragnet was initially used to, as we defined ourselves according to our status and the size of our house and the size of our wallet, we allowed other things to be put in place that targeted those people who didn't fit in, and they became without homes, or they became in incarcerated institutions. But that dragnet that keeps us isolated and alienated so that we're more controllable, it always grows, and the noose tightens. So now you find that where it used to be illegal to sleep in your car, your own car on this public street, because of that false sense of protection and isolation. People wanted to be in their own enclaves of God knows what do you want to call it. Now we've got tent cities all over my city, Vancouver, Washington. And they do occasional sweeps, but they allow that. It means a lot more people are beginning to understand how important it is that we make sure everybody matters and is included. Because eventually, if you don't, you're going to start experiencing what you kind of snubbed your nose at, not in my backyard. It doesn't stop. That kind of stuff grows unless we return to the value of our humanity, and our humanity is based in our connection, our care of each other. And I have chosen, which is, it's almost like insulting to say that I've lived homeless, because the last time when I tried to support a lot of people who I helped get out of the institutions of confinement, and yet I found them being all sucked back in. I became at first so depressed that I decided I didn't want to live in a structure, a house with four walls, if I couldn't share them with people that I loved and who needed that kind of foundation. So I did live for 2 years in a van. And I just, in that time before hitting the bottom of despair, I just did a deeper look into myself and what did I need to transform and change in myself so that I could make a greater difference. How could I connect to my humanity more deeply? So I did live homeless for 2 years, but it was nothing like where you're forced to and you have no other choice. Yeah.
Yeah, thank you, Cindy. Just gonna share sort of Jess's response to the same question.
That was awesome. Okay, so the next question is, what barriers have you faced in creating home?
Okay. What barriers have I faced in creating home? Oh, which ones haven't I faced? So the first one is gender identity. From being a trans girl before I was 18 years old and being excluded from home, being kicked out for my gender identity. And then, of course, my age goes along with that, because then after that, how do I really create a home? I'm under 18 and I don't want to end up in foster care. I'm homeless by default unless someone takes me in. And my gender identity makes that difficult. For me, it was impossible. And then there's discrimination, there's hate, there's violence due to my gender identity. And then there's the barrier of poverty, which also is sort of exacerbated by gender identity, because there's no right to work, right? And if people don't want to hire you, then you're not going to work. And gender identity affects that. Geography, of course, like when it comes to trying to find work or money, depending on where you're at. If you're in a rural area or urban sprawl, it can make it difficult to get transportation just to get to work. So even if there's an ability to work, how do you get there? And it can be hard to save money and do what you need to do to get your place. And it's extremely difficult where buses don't always run, and there's restricted hours, and it ends early. Of course, probably the most difficult barrier has been criminal record, having background checks and things of that nature. Once you're a felon, it makes it almost impossible to live in a lot of places. And I've even heard that there's some tent cities that do background checks. How uppity. I can just imagine that there's this respectability politics that you have to pass a background check to live in a tent city now. I'm sure that white homophobic Jesus must live there. And I don't think I'd want to live there anyway. DOC. The DOC has been a huge barrier. The surveillance, the restrictions, the DOC security archipelago, or the DOC obstacle course that must be satisfied in order to make a place pass inspection to where you're able to live there. So all of those things have been barriers for me. That's all.
Okay, and we're just going to hear briefly from Delante as well.
I guess the barriers is like, for me, it's like, because then at the end of the day, you do need somewhere to live. And once it's hard for me to get that period because I have an arson from when I was like 13 years old, which was just basically playing with fire. But, I got charged with arson in second degree. So that's a barrier in itself. They say criminal history shouldn't really be a barrier to getting housing, but it is. And that's just one barrier. And I mean, not being used to having a job or living that kind of like lifestyle. You don't have those skill sets of waking up every day, paying bills. I have no experience with paying bills, and so these are just things I would have to not relearn, but learn, just to be able to have this kind of home. And for the kids, I need a house for the kids, period. And so I don't know, jobs, employment, or no, that's just two different things. See, I'm butchering this right now.
No, you're fine.
I guess money's a barrier. My criminal history is a barrier. And myself is a barrier. Because once I start feeling comfortable somewhere at any given spot, I do some sort of like self-sabotaging behavior. It gets me out of the situation or just puts me somewhere else. And so, this is just a pattern I've had since I was 13. I don't know. I just don't like, I guess I like the idea of being transient. Because home is just not, I don't know. I like home. I like having somewhere to go, but I don't like being committed to that spot. And that's a barrier that I have within myself that I need to fix.
Okay, Alex, I'm gonna ask the last.
Okay, yeah, let's move on to our last question. And thank you both and everyone. This has been really, really awesome and so fruitful and generative to think about. So for our final question, we want to, imagine against some of these barriers, right? We want to key into that radical imagination of what you'd like to see changed about the way that housing and carceral systems work. So you can interpret that how you'd like, but what kind of home would you like to imagine beyond the prison system, beyond some of the barriers that we've discussed? So I know, Marvin, you have to dip out at 2:30. So do you want to start us off?
Sure, because the groundwork has already been laid. The problem is we don't have to reimagine home. We simply have to understand the term home. It's humane, it's humanity. It's not a system of things. It's not a brick place or dwelling. It is where the concept of community actually takes root, whether you're related by blood, circumstance, or ideology. Doesn't really matter as long as home is the place that you feel, once again, safe to be there, insulated so that you could develop new ideas. I often stray away from the word behaviors because behaviors are learned. We learn them from our environment. We learn them from how we're raised or taught, those are the borrowed things we get from the world sometimes without even knowing it. And then when it comes time to actually have a safe space, insulated enough for you to take a look at what was given to you, you may choose to throw a whole lot out real quick, fast, in a hurry, and learn new skills, new behavior, so you will bring more of your innate talents to bear when provided a safe space in which to be. Rest, which is so often not recognized, people having a space to rest. My early organizing days, I got to work at the Pike Place clinic. And there was honestly the best demonstration of how homelessness needs to be approached and should be approached is that while the system often throws out the need for mental health, folks need jobs, folks are dealing with incarceration and all of these balls that are placed out there as, root causes of homelessness, and they're not. In the middle of all of that chaos, there should be one big ball that says, a safe place to rest. Where can we rest so that we might be able to address all of those many other issues surrounding it? It's the lack of our institutions and systems to provide that one simple piece that really works against all of the other efforts that go on around it. So if I had to reimagine home, I'd love to reimagine a community, city, county, our nation, going back to its roots, acknowledging that homelessness has no place in our time. If you don't have a brick house, you got a wood house. Don't have a wood house, you got a nice canvas dwelling. If not, you're rolling around on the covered wagon as you are moving west. Young people, we've answered, and there are times when we understand the need, the intense need for shelter, community, and home. Maybe it's because we're a superpower. We're not pressed from external forces. We've lost our lens for restorative justice within our own borders. And home allows that to take place. I want to reimagine something. I want to get back to the roots of what it is that really bringing humanity back as the center point of how we go about creating our response systems will go a long way at getting change moving. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Marvin. Cindy, would you like to offer some comment?
Could you, I know the question, but could you say it again one more time, please?
Yeah. So this question is just about reimagining home, a home beyond, right, policing systems, incarceration. What would you like to see changed about the way housing and incarceration is, about the barriers that we just identified, in order for us to reimagine or rethink home?
I think Marvin said it all. I think I'll say it and try to say it in my own words, but it's a safe place. It's a place where you matter, you belong, and you have a voice that impacts the decisions. There's an equality and there's a recognition that we all have in common humanity. And it's because of our connection. There's an African word called Ubuntu, which is it's basically something like I am because you are. Our humanity is deeply interwoven in our connection with each other. So when I imagine us holding that, returning to that, I think what we will create will be totally different than these units of isolation and protectionism to create your space to succeed in the material world. I think the indigenous cultures, they had it back then with what they had. They didn't have the fences. They didn't have the plots and the ownership. That came in with the colonialism and the conquering. Then they divided up the plots, gave the bigger plots to those who they wanted to control their people with, and the smaller plots, and you put up fences and give deeds to property that no longer is the earth that sustains and gives you life, but your property. So I don't think in the quote, developed civilized world, that we have seen what home can be when we stay in touch with our humanity. I just know there'll be lots of love. I just know that nobody will be excluded. I just know that the children will have a voice, they won't be conformed, and the elders will have a voice as the wisdom keepers, and the birds and the flowers and the bees will be part of it. And I don't know yet because I haven't found enough of those who haven't connected yet with enough of those so that we can rebuild the space that we occupy as humans, not only being, but becoming. I just know there'll be lots and lots of love and abundance. There won't be a short supply.
Thank you so much, Cindy.
Yeah, we're just gonna hear from Jess on the same question.
Let's say, Erica Miner says liberation under oppression is unthinkable by design. And I don't know, I guess trying to think of that, each person individually is a bit like escaping the prison, right? Well, I like to think more like Jean-Paul Sartre and try to find a way that we can explode the prison. How can we make liberation thinkable for everyone instead of me trying to imagine this? But anyway, home is clean. It has drinkable water, which some people don't have, even if they have a house. It has heat. It has electricity. It has furniture. I'd like to live with others and have the freedom to have guests so that I'm not alone or isolated. So home would allow me to do that. I would have space to sleep uninterrupted and free from immediate fear of intrusion or fear of being displaced. It would be in a city or a town near others and within walking distance, or at least have like access to public transportation to get to those places where we need to go. Not urban sprawl or rural. It would have a kitchen. It would have access to a garden, or at least have access to fresh vegetables from a garden. It would have space for family to happen in the verbal sense. It would be free from unfettered surveillance and intrusion, for sure, and DOC would have limits. It is a place where I'm responsible and accountable to others, but never controlled or dominated by them. I would have space to practice art or music, because I'm a musician. And I would have space for my office or workspace so that I can study and write, because I'm a published writer and I like to write, and I want to finish my undergraduate degree and consider graduate school. And it's also a place where I could invite you in for coffee, tea, or water, and we can sit and talk about this some more. That's all.
Okay, and then we'll briefly just hear from Delonte.
Okay, so the first part of what needs to change. What needs to change is there's like no resources for post-release.
Mm-hmm.
There's a lot expected of you when you release, but for those who can't get to work release, and for those who don't, get the luxury of the whopping whatever amount of money it is for the 3 months you get for the housing voucher, those are limited, and there's really no like help for those who want to do better when they get out.
Mm-hmm.
And like for me, I mean, I feel like I have a pretty good support system, and in here, that support system, for those who don't have the luxury of that, they rely on the people in here, and then once they're out of here, they lose that, and then they feel like they're on their own and they're alone out there, and that's because there's no like the DOC division of reentry out there that they can fall back on. Yeah, they have a DOC office. Yeah, they can ask them for. I don't even know what you could ask a DOC officer for, except can you not give me the max violation? So I just feel like there needs to be more money that DOC delegates toward reentry. I feel like that's more important than the programs that they try to just make themselves look good and fill the space in, because those programs don't really help people. It's just to help show them, oh, look at our success right here in prison. We got these programs. People they have no choice but to go to them, and so people aren't going to try their best if they're forced to do something. They're just going to go take it till they make it. And I was one of those people, and so. Yeah, I think there needs a lot more money to get put into this reentry. A lot of this, everyone focuses on criminalizing and puts people in prison, but then you remove people from society for so long, and then you don't give them that much. You spent all this effort to put them away for actually a good chunk of change or time, and then you just give up on them afterwards. I mean, if they have probation, they're expected to follow these rules and maintain employment. Housing, but even if you lose your housing because you get a DOC violation, and you lose your job because you got a DOC violation, they're okay with you being homeless too, or you got to report in weekly. So there's just, I don't know, there's just nobody looks forward to getting out. I mean, yeah, they like the idea of being outside of prison. Everyone loves that idea. A lot of people are scared to go out there because they know they don't have help. Their family, some people's families have abandoned them. Some people are giving up on them. Most of my family's given up on me because this is a pattern they see. And then you got to add the whole mental health issue there as well, because you got to take care of people's mental health. And I don't know. There's just so many things that can be done that it's good to bring up, but I feel like it needs to be more put into action.
Yeah. What about the second part? Yeah.
An ideal home.
Yeah.
I mean, I want a home where I feel. The big thing for me, as long as I feel safe and wanted there. Those are big for me. Like those are like tailored to my needs. As long as I feel wanted and I feel secure in my home, then I think I would mind staying. Like, 'cause I'm not big into like TV. I'm not big into video games. I just like being somewhere where I'm wanted and where people love you. And if I can't have that, then I don't want to be at that home. Which is why home has been so transient for me. I've been transferred every home to home. That's probably why I've never even desired to get my own place, because I would want to leave, and I wouldn't want people over, and then, I don't know, it's too much. But that's what ideal home for me would be like. It's not so much like a possession or a nice ass mansion or something. I would prefer just somewhere where I feel valued, loved, and cared for. Something that, so growing up, I felt oddly loved, but it was like kind of twisted with like the physical abuse part. It's kind of, so that whole idea of home kind of muddies, but if I ever dreamed of somewhere to be where I can call home those qualities I just stated, those would be high on my list.
Yeah.
Thank you all. Alex, would we like to open it up for a Q&A? I know, Cindy, you have to head out soon as well. But if people have any questions, you can put them in the Q&A box down below in case Cindy is able to answer them, or we can pass any questions you have on to Jess, Delante, or Marvin as well.
I probably couldn't answer one question. So
I think if there are no questions, we are all good to wrap up. I just want to give a big thank you to Cindy for being here, and obviously big thank you to the interpreters and the rest of the panelists for making this conversation happen. Yeah, Alex, do you have any final words for us, or we good? Okay.
I just wanted to say thank you, and thank you, Cindy, and thanks to our other panelists, and also thank you for all of our attendees. Thanks for such an engaging and moving discussion, and so generative. So I appreciate it.
Yeah.
I want to say thank you to Alec and the rest of the organization that has been so supportive and helpful of me in my struggles to recreate a community that matters so that my son and others don't pay the price. And so I really appreciate being on here. Sorry I was late. It's just by accident that I just picked it up because I had you folks down for tomorrow after another panel. So thank you. Glad I made it.
Thank you so much. All right. Thanks all.
Bye-bye.